Okay, folks, so we'll go ahead and get started this morning. I want to thank y'all for, many of y'all have been returning and coming each week, and I really appreciate that. I see we've got some new folks here, so welcome. My name is Sam Womble. I'm the county agent for Ag and Natural Resources here in San Antonio in Bexar County, so I want to welcome you here this morning. We got a really good topic, I think, set up for today, and garnered a little bit more interest than we've had at some of our other meetings, which is exciting. We've got Dr. Maureen Frank. Dr. Frank is our Extension Wildlife Specialist. She's based out in Valley, and she was gracious enough to take some time out of her schedule and come visit with us this morning about snakes and other reptiles. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the program over to her. Let you know we've got refreshments and there's some drinks. I've got more drinks in the fridge, which is just in the kitchen area right around the corner. So if y'all get thirsty for something, please make your stuff at home and help yourself. The restrooms are right down that hallway to the right. So if you need to use the restroom, I want to make sure y'all know where those are. So with that said, Dr. Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll go ahead and start the line.
All right. Thanks. All right. So first, this is, and as Sam said, I think this is an important talk in a wildlife series for an urban area because snakes are out there. They're around, snakes and other reptiles. And there's something that a lot of people have misconceptions about, or some people really enjoy having them around. And they're just one of those things that's good to talk about, and good to kind of get the different aspects covered. So first off, I want to start off with, who here loves snakes? Who here is super excited about snakes? Okay, awesome. So you'll be excited when I get excited about snakes. I really enjoy working with snakes and other reptiles. Is anybody here who is like, okay, snakes are okay, as long as they're kind of not in my personal space, they're good in the garden, but they don't really want to be close to them. So anybody here kind of that middle ground? Okay, they've got their role, but you don't really need them up close. Who here is like, no snakes, no way? Okay, now to do no snakes, no way. Okay. Anybody here, like, so there's a reason I started with just a little icon of a snake. Is anybody here, like, you don't even want to see pictures of snakes and you might look away while I'm talking? Okay, I just want to check because I understand that's a very real fear that some people have. My grandma is an amazing woman. She's very intelligent. She understands logically that she should not be afraid of snakes and she can't even look at pictures of them. Like, she would probably come today because I'm her granddaughter, but she would probably just sit here with her eyes closed. So if anybody wants to worry, I won't get to them. Because I get that. That's the real thing. So, okay, I just want to kind of see where everybody's at. But this is kind of where we're going to go today. So I'm going to start, because this is a 2-hour series. I'm really going to spend the first whole hour just on snakes. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about with snakes. First off, identification. You've got to know what you have before you can do any managing of it. Then their role in the ecosystem. So why are they important? And we let them be in our gardens. Habitat, and then IPM, which IPM is integrated pest management. So we start with talking about their habitat because that's really the foundation of all IPM strategies. And so we'll learn about what snake habitat is so that then we can manage it. Let's get some how's that for y'all? No, I think so. Part one's off because, yeah, you can feel it better. Yeah. We'll try to keep everybody awake. Okay. Anyhow, and then our second part, we'll cover other reptiles within this area is lizards and turtles. I've got a handful of kids in the room. Any of y'all want to tell me what our other reptile is? That I don't have listed up here? What's another kind of reptile that I don't have? Anybody want to help them out? Alligators, yeah. So crocodilians are the ones that's not listed up here. I've only been in Uvalde for about a year now. Our crocodile, have we found alligators in San Antonio at some point? Yes? Okay, so that can be a thing? Okay. So I'm not going to cover them today because they're not typically something that's here. We're pretty far west in what the range would be. So we'll focus on lizards and turtles, so that'll be the second part of our talk. So before we go into any of this, though, we have to talk about ecoregions. So what I mean when I talk about ecoregions, there's a few different ways to define this. But ecoregions help us understand what different kinds of biota, so what different plants and animals and insects, all those things we're going to find depending on where we are. And that's because we've got really different habitats all throughout the state. So I'm sure y'all know that something that you're going to see in East Texas is going to look really different from when you're out in West Texas. So this is full of ecoregions. This is one of the ones that's pretty commonly used. And so we look at this, and there's the whole state of Texas. One of the awesome things about Texas is how diverse it is. You can see we've got 12 different ecoregions by this definition of ecoregions, which is really neat. And I'll overlay that with where are we. It helps to know where your county is and how that falls in the ecoregion. And if we zoom in on that, what's really awesome about Bexar County here is that we have 4 different ecoregions all coming together in one place, which is really, really awesome. So this blue here is the Edwards Plateau. Some kind of purple-gray color is the Blacklands Prairie. This orangish here is the Sunset Savannah, and then the green is the South Texas Plains. So you can see, depending on where you are in Bexar County, you're going to have some pretty different habitats. Now, this means a couple different things. For one, it means that somebody just up in the north part of the county and somebody in the south part of the county, they've got some pretty different habitats. You're going to see different types of vegetation and different animals that go along with that different habitat. And it also means that you might see some mixing of things. So when we talk about what kinds of snakes might you find here, because there's some things that you're not going to find here. Cobras, right? Boa constrictors. Those are things that aren't native to Texas. If you find them here, that is possible. That could mean that somebody's released them, but usually those aren't things that are native here. So we completely rule those out. But even when we talk about things that live within the U.S., there's a snake called Louisiana pine snake. You can find it out in East Texas because that borders Louisiana, but you're not going to find it here. What you can find, though, is that typically if there's a snake that you might find in kind of the Blacklands Prairie region, and you're right here where we're kind of mixing those different ecoregions, or even you're up here on the north side, you may find some of those species. So one of the things I like to do when I'm teaching people to identify is ask what's in your area. What are even your possibilities? So Sam and I were talking about this right before we started. There was a snake in his family's garage last night, and a neighbor came over. He wasn't there yet, and his wife was calling and saying, hey, there's a snake. And so they were looking at it, trying to figure out what it was. And the gentleman had said he thought it was a Mexican racer. We're not in the range for a Mexican racer, so that's probably not what it was, but it was probably a different subspecies that's really similar. So I like to tell people, consider where you are, narrow down within that, but when we're where we are in Bexar County, keep in mind that there's a lot of mixing here, and so you can get things that are nearby from these different ecoregions. All right, so starting off with snakes. Identification, we've got to know what we have. And when we're talking about snakes, the first important question that everybody wants to know is it venomous or is it not venomous? I notice I'm going to use venomous instead of poisonous. Venomous is referring to something that's producing a toxin that it can inject into something. So we talk about poisonous things, we're talking about things berries could be poisonous. Snakes are venomous. Something like poison dart frogs, those are an animal, but they're still poisonous because you get that toxin from touching them or from ingesting them, not from it being injected into you. So venom is something that's injected into you. And that's something that we see with some kinds of snakes. Venomous versus non-venomous is a good question, and the thing that I would encourage you to do is, and I've got a slide on this later, is to learn what your venomous snakes are. So we're going to talk about identification. But for the most part, if you're not sure, the best thing to do is to stay away from it. Because some of the things that we do to identify one from the other, some of them you can pick up pretty quick, but a lot of them you also have to be a little bit close to be able to tell what's going on. And if you're close enough to be able to tell and you're not sure up to that point, you don't really want to be that close. So one thing that's really nice, I'm originally from Colorado. In Colorado, the only venomous snakes we have are rattlesnakes. That's really useful because they make noise at you if they're venomous, and you can see from a long way off, okay, it's got rattles on its tail, I'm not going to mess with it. No rattles, we're good to go. Here, that's a little bit different. Most of our venomous snakes here, the majority of the number of species are rattlesnakes, but there are some other things as well. So of these two snakes up here, this one on the right is obviously a rattlesnake. What about the other one though? Not a rattlesnake. Anybody know what it is? Bull snake. This is one of my favorite snakes of all time. Bull snakes are super awesome because they think they're rattlesnakes. They have a little venom to back it up, but they have an attitude that says, hey, I'm a Western diamondback rattlesnake. You can get some that are really docile, and that's neat, but the way that these guys have adapted to survive in their landscape is by acting like a Western diamondback rattlesnake. Their ranges overlap for the most part of where they are. So you can see that the bull snake is all coiled up so that it looks like a rattlesnake. He's got his mouth open like he's going to strike at you, and they actually make their hissing noise of bull snake sounds like a rattle, which is really cool. So they will mimic a rattlesnake right down to that sound. And the only thing you can't see his tail over here in the picture. So you can't see, he's kind of got some bands on it. So just like this rattlesnake here has these alternating black and white bands, this bull snake has the alternating dark brown and kind of that light tan. He's just missing that rattle on the end. Now, with a bull snake, once you've learned a few tricks that we're going to talk about to identify, you can tell them apart pretty readily. But if you get a snake all coiled up on you like this and you're just not sure if it's a bull snake or a rattlesnake, just go ahead and leave it alone. And that's fine. You should be able to check those doesn't have beads on tail. and then that'll be, if it does not, it's a bull snake or some other kind of pit viper. So we are going to talk about some of those other pit vipers. Yeah, so these guys are a lot of fun. They will sometimes be pretty docile. You can handle bull snakes, and usually once they calm down, they're like, hey, you're not going to eat me, we're good. But I've had a little 12-inch one before. I was trying to move it out of the parking lot, because I was trying to skirt and not get squished. And it thought it was the biggest, baddest rattlesnake ever, and it was trying to fight me, and it was all coiled up, and trying to be as big as it could. So they can be pretty good. So the first thing that's really common that you'll hear a lot for venomous versus non-venomous snakes, this works for all pit vipers. So I'm gonna back up real quick. This is a rattlesnake, or pit vipers. Pit vipers are, again, our most common type of snake that we have in the U.S. So snake teeth can work a couple different ways. You can't really see this bull snake teeth, but what you can see, which is now open, is that you can't see any fangs, right? So non-venomous snakes usually have what we call chewing teeth. So they can grab onto something, they can hold onto it so it's not going to go anywhere, and they can chew it, but not because they're chewing it in pieces, right? Because they're working it down into their mouth so that they can swallow it. Pit vipers have what rear-facing fangs that rotate out when they go to strike. So you can't see it until it opens his mouth, but his fangs are tucked back behind in his jaw, and then when he goes to bite, they'll rotate forward so that he can bite. That's our pit vipers, and that's most of what our snakes are, but we also have coral snakes. Coral snakes are in a family of snakes that have rear-facing fangs that don't move forward. So their fangs are going to be pointing backwards in their mouth, and they're always going to stay pointing backwards. When they bite, they can't rotate at all. So that's important because when we talk about this trick here and the next trick, both of these only apply to pit vipers. They don't apply to coral snakes. So the pupil shape is one. So on the left, we've got a non-venomous snake. On the right, we have a venomous snake. Now, this works for all pit vipers. If you notice, our snake on the left has a round pupil, and on the right, it's kind of got this split diamond shape. So I'll wrap that up so you can look at them again. Here, round pupil. Here, this little split, kind of like eye. Looks mean, right? That's one thing you can kind of tell on pit vipers. You go, hey, that snake looks mean. Well, part of what makes it look mean is that little split eye. Now, this is a copperhead. This is one of our pit vipers that does not rattle. So again, you can see pretty clearly that eye shape. The next thing that, again, that only works for pit vipers is the head shape and the neck shape. Now, the reason they're called pit vipers is because of these two venom glands that are on the side of their head, these two pits that they have on the side of their head. And what those do is they make their heads really triangular. So you get that broad shape that's really triangular. But not just that, they have these pits and it makes their head triangular. They also have a really well-defined neck. So you can see where his neck starts back there. On our non-venomous snake, so we have a hot-nosed snake and a garter snake over here. For one, you can see they don't have the pits on the sides. But for two, you can see how thick the rest of their necks are. Now, hot-nosed snakes, when they get mad, they puff up, and they try to be as big as they can be too. But it's different from having these venom glands right here because they've got no neck. They look like somebody that's just got their head pulled back all the time, right? And no neck. It just goes from the head right into the rest of their body. And so that's different from a rattlesnake where you see this enlarged part here where the venom glands are, but then it goes down into a nice skinny neck. So that's something different. I'll back that up again so that you can see how it's different on those guys. Again, this only works for pit vipers versus non-venomous snakes. Alright, when we talk about our coral snake, so let's talk about those two things we talked about before. Remember, this is not a pit viper. You can't really see his eyes here. He does have round pupils, so that trick doesn't work. And he does have a pretty rectangular head. So again, his venom is different than a pit viper, so he's kind of got a nice rectangular head. But this one is venomous. Now, color is the thing that you guys probably have heard the rhyme, right? Does anyone want to tell me the rhyme with the red and black? Sometimes people get it mixed up, but the main thing you have to remember is red touch black, friend of Jack, red touch yellow, fill a fellow. Don't even worry about the first part. Red touch yellow, fill a fellow. That's the important part of that rhyme. And so you can see on this guy right here, he's got the red touch yellow. This one's venomous. This is a milk snake. These guys are super friendly. And you can see his red is touching black. So that's fine. His red is these ones are kind of more of a white than a yellow. Now, this rule, I like to point out, only works in North America. If you go to Central America, if you go to South America, there are snakes that look like this, and they're venomous. So if you're going outside the country, be even more careful as to snakes as to whether they're venomous or not. But as long as you're hanging out here in Texas, this will be just fine. Now, I mentioned that these guys' fangs are different. something that you're probably pretty familiar with is when we're talking about something like a rattlesnake, they get all coiled up and you want to stay away from them, right? Because they can strike. Now they cannot strike more than their body distance. That's one common misconception. Is they can kind of launch themselves at you to be able to get you. They still have to, they can really only go their length, and it's not even quite their full length of their body. But you want to give them that space, because when they're coiled up, you can't exactly tell. It'd be 6 feet long, it'd be 8 feet long, and you don't really want to mess with that, how far they might be. Tail snakes don't strike like that, and they don't hunt like that. So they're a little bit different. They don't typically coil up on you when they get mad. So you can get a little closer to them. I don't necessarily recommend that, but you can get a little closer, and they're a lot more docile overall. So it is very uncommon for people to get bitten by these. They're a lot smaller. They're just less aggressive usually. So coral snakes are usually not much of a concern. If you see one in your garden, if you see one around your house, you can really probably just leave it. It's probably not really any threat to you. Does anybody know what most snake bites? Who gets the most snake bites in the country every year? This is all across the U.S. Any guesses? Yeah.
Gardeners?
Young men who are inebriated and trying to play with them or kill them. Drunk regulars. Or just other people out in their backyard. Hey, I can catch that snake, probably throwing off or who knows. But usually it's young men. Usually they're inebriated, and usually they're trying to play with or kill the snake. So, does that mean that if you're a gardener, you're not going to come across one and accidentally get bitten? Sure, that can happen, and that does sometimes happen, but usually that's not who we see. If you're an elderly woman being stupid with snakes while you're inebriated, then yeah, probably the same thing's going to happen to you. But that's really the large majority of our bites. And most of the bites across the U.S. again, but especially in Texas, are from pit vipers. And again, coral snake bites are really, really uncommon. Now, if you happen to get bit by a coral snake, go to the ER immediately. They have the highest potency venom of any of our snakes. And the bad thing is that usually the symptoms don't show up right away, and by the time they do, it's too late. So there is anti-venom for these. You can go, you can get treated. You don't have to experience symptoms. You can get there fast enough and get treated. Your symptoms might not be that bad, but if you wait till that symptoms start, it's not good, because their venom is so toxic. Again, you have to really be messing with these guys to get a bite from a coral snake. But for the most part, all snakes, especially if they're venomous, just leave them alone. There are some that are not venomous, but can still give you a pretty nasty bite, and I'll point some of those guys out too. So this is what I mentioned earlier. Learn your local venomous snakes. There's not a ton of them. Most of our snakes are non-venomous and really beneficial. So if you learn these few that you have around here that are venomous, then you can avoid those ones. Rattlesnakes are really easy. They've got the rattles on the end, they'll make noise when they're angry at you. Avoid those. Copperheads are pretty bold colors. That was the one that was back a few slides. They've got those really obvious bands, very heavy bodied snakes. Cottonmouths, also called water moccasins, were really on the western edge of these guys' range. So because it's dry in a lot of places, unless you're around a creek or kind of a marshy area, you're not typically going to find these around here. They will come occasionally even as far west as you Valley, but that's really, really uncommon. So these ones you don't have to worry as much as if you were out in East Texas. And I know we have somebody listening in on WebEx out in College Station, and yes, they'll get a lot more cottonmouths than we will. And then coral snakes are our last one. But as I said, if you're unsure, leave it alone. But I want to talk next a little bit more about this identification. So you can learn those different ones, but when you go out there and you're in the garden or you're in the backyard and you see one of those, how do you know? How is it that some people will see something and they say, oh, I know that's a racer. I don't know what kind of racer, but I know it's a racer. Or, oh, I know that's a garter snake. I can say pretty quickly, or I know that's a garter snake. What are those keys that I'm looking at that's telling me those kinds of things? So when we talk about size, length is what people talk about a lot, right? And so we say, it was a really big snake. Or other people might say, it was a really big snake, right? So what people consider to be really big is very subjective. And snakes grow for a long time, right? So you can find the same piece of snake that's this big as you can find that's this big, and you can find that's even bigger than that. So length is not always the most useful piece. Girth is really, really useful. So I'm going to show you some pictures, and then the final thing is using a reference item. Since I started in this position, I've got a lot of emails about, can you please identify the snake for me? Unfortunately, none of the snakes were alive in those pictures. None of the snakes were venomous. I've yet to sent a venomous snake to identify. And none of those used a reference item. If you ever send me a snake picture to ID, I'm happy to do it. I'll be even happier if the snake's alive, and really, really happy if you put something in the picture. Even your hand is useful if you're going to do that close. Something like shovel is useful. Something like shoe is useful. Something that I can kind of see for reference. So when we're talking about size, so all of these guys have different kind of what their maximum lengths are. There's only one venomous snake in all of these pictures, and that's this diamondback rattlesnake down here. So you can see, as far as color, we've kind of got some similar patterns, right? We've got a whole bunch of brown snakes with brown patterns. So let's talk about some size differences we see, though. This up here is this is what kind of racers typically look like. I'm trying to remember if this guy's actually a racer or not, but you can see how skinny he is all the way along, right? His head's really narrow, he's really skinny all the way along. Something like a rat snake, you've got a little bit bigger head, but still a pretty skinny body. This snake here again, kind of a bigger head, a little bit skinny body. And then I want you to compare that with the hognose snake, which again, this is the one that they puff up when they're mad, and they just look like they have no neck whatsoever. He's thick along his whole body. So these guys won't get very long, but regardless of how long they are, even the little short ones are going to be thick like this, almost an even length all along his body. And then compare that to the western diamondback. He's got an extremely thick body. Again, we can see this triangle-shaped head that narrows into a neck. But from that neck, it actually broadens out where you can see his body here is thicker than his head is right here. So very, very wide girth on those diamondback rattlesnakes. And that's something that's consistent. No matter how long a rattlesnake is, he's going to look like he's got a pretty good sized body circumference. So that's one different thing to look for. You can kind of see those different body shapes overall. Coloring patterns is really useful. So even if I back up to this slide here, there's some different things that we might see. None of these guys are really a solid color, but you can tell that on this rat snake, we've got some browns and they've got outlines in black. That's a little bit different from on the diamondback where we've got these diamonds with open color in the middle, and here on the hognose snake where we've got blotches that are a little bit uneven. So there's a lot of color variations in snakes. One of the things that's sold in the pet trade pretty commonly are corn snakes, and corn snakes have been bred into just an amazing array of colors. You can get albino ones, you can get amelanistic, which is different from albino, you can get completely black ones, you can get orange ones, you can get all these different colors of snakes, and they're all the same kind of snake. That happens in the wild too. I've seen some pretty incredible pictures, and I actually have one later, of just colors that you wouldn't expect to see. However, a lot of times these kind of patterns are the same. So even if you had a snake that was different colors than these, maybe these browns were a little bit lighter, it would still have those darker colored outlines around it. So that's something to look for. Also, you could kind of group snakes into these broad categories as to what their color and patterns are doing. So solid color, we don't have a whole lot of solid colored snakes. So if you have one that's completely the same color all across it, that'll help you narrow down a lot what it is. Longitudinal stripes, so that's a stripe running down the length of the snake, down the body. Sometimes it'll go along the back, sometimes it'll go along the sides, and that's a really helpful clue. Blotches or spots, so that's kind of those uneven spots all over, as opposed to bands, where you kind of see a certain band of color going around, like on a coral snake or the mill snake. So here's some good examples of that. So here, this is called an earth snake. Not a very exciting name, not a very exciting snake. He's brown from head to toe. That distinguishes him from most of the other snakes we'll see. Most of them are not that solid brown color. This snake here, and forgetting the name right now, but he's got that longitudinal stripe. You can see actually there's a couple longitudinal stripes. For one, he's got this brown color on top and this yellow on the bottom, so that two-tone pattern is pretty distinctive. Again, even if this is a lighter brown and kind of a more cream yellow, you would see still that distinctive, sharp color line along them. But then you can also see kind of faintly here, you've got kind of a light, or not a light, a darker brown line there, and one that's also separating from those two colors. So that kind of patterning is going to show up, even if those colors are slightly different. Here's our hognose snake. Again, these are showing us an example of blotches. And then here on this copperhead, you can see an example of these bands, or we might even call these saddles. They're kind of that alternating color all down the length of the snake. All right, so to do some identification, you really have to get up close and personal with snakes. Again, if it's going to be venomous versus non-venomous, one of the ways that you can tell venomous versus non-venomous snakes is that they have different scales below their anal plate. So that's the plate that is under the anus of the snake where the body ends and the tail begins. And if you are able to tell me what is going on as to whether it's venomous or not venomous based on the anal plate of the snake, you are way too close to that snake. You should have already determined by then whether or not it was venomous. However, if you know you have a non-venomous snake, say you have a garter snake. Garter snakes are super awesome. They're usually really docile, and they come in a really awesome array of colors. Some of those, or even the difference between a garter snake and a ribbon snake, you got to pick them up and look at them up close and personal. One thing is eye markings, and that's one thing you'll see in guidebooks that will tell you to look for sometimes. So here's our bull snake from an earlier slide, and this is a corn snake. The corn snakes always have this dark mark by their eye, so it looks like they've got a little band right there by their eye. The bull snake doesn't have this. Now this is a very vibrant colored corn snake. Remember I said these guys come in a lot of colors. I've seen them in colors almost exactly matching a bull snake color. So they're kind of this light with kind of this brown, with tan brown rather than any of this red. They can look a whole lot like a bull snake, especially if it's a little bit bigger corn snake, or if you have a smaller bull snake. They're a lot alike. However, you can see on this bull snake, it doesn't have that mark by his eyes, and they won't. Bull snakes don't ever have that. So that's one thing to look for. Ventral color. Ventral coloring is the color on their stomach. So if you do have one in your hand, flip it over and see what color its stomach is. Certain snakes will be a different color on their stomach. It's pretty consistent. And then finally, scales. So I mentioned telling the difference between something like a ribbon snake and a garter snake. Those are two really neat snakes, and sometimes you have to tell them apart by counting the scales from their ventral scales. Ventral scales look different than these ones do. Here you can see on the sides they've got a whole bunch of little scales. The belly scales are big flat plate scales, and so if you flip them over, you can see those. And you count from those, and you have to count the number of rows up. So if you're really into, is it a ribbon snake or a garter snake, you've got to have them in hand so that you can tell that. Again, though, you certainly don't have to do that. That's really just if you're more interested in it. But that is why sometimes, if you can send me a picture, and if I can't see those scales on the side and I can't count that, I might not be able to tell you for sure what kind of snake it is. So those are some of the details that we need if we're trying to identify a snake. But I can tell you a lot of other things. I can put in a general broad categories, usually just with a picture that's not quite that up close. Okay, so what I wanted to do in this next section is really just cover some of your local snakes. So what I did to get these are the 10 snakes that have most commonly been reported to iNaturalists for Bexar County. Who's familiar with iNaturalist? Okay, if you haven't ever used it before, it's really awesome. You can download it as a free app, which is great. Apps that are free, I think, are always a good way to start. And then you can take a picture. The way iNaturalist works is you have to take a picture of whatever you're documenting, and then you can upload it, and if you know what it is, you mark it, and then it marks, okay, I found this thing here. If you don't know what it is, people are awesome on iNaturalist about helping you identify things. I had a really cool caterpillar at my house the other day. I'm a wildlife person, I'm not a caterpillar person, and so I took a picture of it, and I uploaded it, and I think it was 28 minutes later, I had 2 different people telling me what kind of caterpillar it was, and that was awesome. So you get a good picture, and people will definitely help you out. The cool thing about iNaturalist is that then you're saving those observations so that researchers can use them too. And researchers can say, okay, we've got a lot of this kind of animal in this area. You can see how that changes throughout the seasons in different types of land use, so things that we have in urban areas versus rural areas. That's really helpful. So I encourage you to check out iNaturalist if you haven't already. And so I went in Bexar County to look at all the snakes that are most common there. Now, just because it's listed as most common in iNaturalist doesn't mean that it's the most numerous on the landscape. There are some snakes that just really like to hide, and you're just really not going to see them. Actually, there's one on this list that I was surprised that many people have found it, because they're usually very secretive and you don't find them. However, checkered garter snake, they're number 1, and they probably are the most common snake out on the landscape. Garter snakes do pretty well in all kinds of places. You'll find them everywhere. They're all across the U.S., and they're just different species. Checkered garter snake, pretty cool. It's pretty easy to identify because this pattern of checkers goes all the way down to the back. A couple other things about garter snakes, they usually have these dark markings by their eyes, and they have this nice longitudinal stripe all the way down the back. Usually it's kind of a yellow or cream color. There's some species where it's a red color, but usually it's kind of like yellowish cream. So again, you might vary in color, but overall body plan is going to look like this. They can range from, they're little itty bitty when they're born to 5, I think maybe some of them can be even 6 feet long. But they're very narrow like this. They never get that thick body. They always have a nice thin little body. Garter snakes are awesome because one of their favorite foods are slugs. So gardeners in here, these guys are your friends because they're going to eat your slugs. They also eat other insects, so that's really their main thing. They can eat, if you've got like a really, really small rodent, they can eat that, but for the most part, they're going to eat insects. This is a snake that I mentioned. It's not venomous, but you don't want to get bit by it, and I know that, not from personal experience, but when I took herpetology field class, one of my friends experienced that. So this is a diamondback water snake. Water snake is key here. You're usually not going to find these unless you're down in and around the water. Now, they look, you can see the head here is kind of big. Again, they're kind of looking like maybe it's a venomous snake, but when you see the pupil, they've got round pupils. So this is not one of our venomous snakes. They're just mean. They just, if you grab one, it wants to bite you. They're not going to be happy with you. But again, they're usually kind of around water areas. They're not something you can find in your garden if it's dry. Or if you have a pond around, maybe. But they're a pretty big, stocky snake. So you can see, as compared to the garter snake, even if these guys are the same length, he's got a nice skinny body. His water snake is fat. He's got a big, fat, thick body all the way around. Also, really common on the water snake, and you saw on the garter snake, he's got these lines up by his eyes. Water snakes typically have lines on their lips, so they have these little dark marks along their lips there. This is one of the ones that I was surprised to see. So this is a rough earth snake. They're usually pretty secretive. They spend a lot of time in hiding places on the ground. Anybody see something in this picture that you can use for scale, that you can tell how big this snake is? Yeah. Yeah, some scales. There's a roly-poly right there. So roly-poly is about very big. So this is not a very big snake. These don't get very big. They're pretty docile. Again, they're mostly eating insects and bugs and things like that. So they're pretty fun to have around. Pretty tame. Western rat snake. So these guys get bigger. You can tell though right away. You can't know if people because his eyes are dark, but his head shape is just pretty blocky. He doesn't have much of a neck. Again, these are ones that they will, like their name say, they'll eat rats. So these are a good one to have around, keep the rodent populations down. Not too much to say about these guys. They can range from a little bit more aggressive to a little bit more docile, but for the most part, they're not really going to hurt anything. As for a venomous, he has these dark saddles. These guys can range a lot in color, but they've got still these dark saddles on kind of a lighter background. You can see compared to those two snakes we had earlier, he doesn't have any markings on his lips like that water snake did, nor does he have any of the dark ones along his eyes like the garter snake did. He's also a heavier body type in between those two, right? Thicker body than the garter snake, but not quite so thick as the water snake. The rattlesnakes, we're on what, I think number 4 right now, so this is the 4th most reported on iNaturalist. However, is also, of those top 10 reported on iNaturalist, is the only venomous one. Diamondback rattlesnakes are really common in this area. They are something that is good to be careful of because they're out there. However, again, I like venomous snakes that tell you that they're there, but they will typically rattle at you when they're there. Yes?
I have a cousin that has 3 rattlesnakes. And one of them has had for 16 years.
He has them like a pest, or he just has them in his yard? And he can
come out in a barrel.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Barrel.
Yeah, they can live a really long time. So if you do find one in your yard, if it likes being there, then they can live for a long time. So we'll talk about when we get to the integrated pest management. If you've got one of these guys around and you don't want it around, it's completely understandable. I don't want these around in my yard either. We'll talk about how to get rid of them. So yeah, because they can live for a while. Yes.
We had a rattlesnake by my house, and it rattled initially. We didn't know how it was there, but then when we tried to find it again and behind some bushes, it never, ever rattled. Never.
Yeah.
We didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard lots of stories about that, but not rattling.
Yes, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So there are a lot of stories out there about why will rattlesnakes sometimes rattle and sometimes they don't. Some people have claimed that because even the presence of wild pigs, that rattlesnakes rattle less often. None of our research has shown that to be true. The reason that they rattle sometimes and not rattle others, as far as our research tells us right now, is that with all snakes, their main role in the ecosystem is that they're predators. They're going to be eating other things. However, they're also prey, and there are things that are looking for them to eat. So when something like a rattlesnake encounters you, probably when it first saw you, it rattles because it was like, hey, stay away, I'm dangerous, I don't want you to mess with me. That's the whole reason these guys have have the defense of being able to have venom. It's one, so they can catch prey, but also so that they can keep from being somebody else's lunch. So that's why they'll rattle. However, if they can get to where he's hiding, so if he's under bushes or under things, where he thinks he's out of sight, rattling just tells you where he is, right? That's what you guys wanted. When you wanted to know where he was, he didn't want you to know where he was, because for all he knows, you want to eat him for lunch or shoot him or whatever. So a lot of times once they're somewhere where they think they're hidden, they've got great camouflage, right? He can blend in really well. If you have some dry grass back here, so the green grass, he would blend right in. And so yeah, they'll a lot of times once they're kind of hidden, they're going to keep quiet so that they can wait for the danger to pass. So yeah, that's a really good point about rattlesnakes and rattling. Not 100% guarantees that they will rattle at you. So again, just something to kind of watch for with them. They are venomous. Usually they won't mess with you if you don't mess with them. If you do get bitten, get to the ER quickly because there is anti-venom and it's treatable. So it's definitely something that even though people get bitten every year, not a lot of people die from rattlesnake bites because if you get to the hospital, you'll usually be okay. But just be careful with them. Don't reach into places that you think they might be. Yes, ma'am.
So the anti-venom, is that something that's carried like in all hospitals and stuff in the area, or how do you know where to go?
Yeah, so just go to the hospital. Either they will have it or they will get it for you. Most hospitals have the anti-venom for rattlesnakes. So different snakes that have different types of venom, there's different kinds of anti-venom that go along with that. For all rattlesnakes, actually I think for all pit vipers, the anti-venom is the same. So whether you get hit by this or copperhead or cottonmouth, doesn't matter, they're going to give you the same anti-venom because their venom's really similar. Most of the hospitals across America and definitely in this area will have anti-venom. I heard a rumor that Uvalde Hospital doesn't have any. That makes me a little nervous. I don't know if that's true. But a lot of hospitals will carry a small amount. Because snake bites occur so infrequently, they usually don't have a lot of it on hand. So if, a whole family of people wanders into a den of rattlesnakes, you might get in a little bit of trouble, but they can still get it from elsewhere. A lot of times zoos will carry it, and a lot of times zoos will carry anti-venom for the more exotic kinds of snakes, because there's some kinds of exotic snakes, like if you get bit by a cobra, rattlesnake anti-venom is not going to work on you, because it's a different kind of venom. And so a lot of times zoos and things have like that. And that's a lot of people that do die from snake bites in the U.S. are people that are keeping snakes as pets and they have something exotic, and when they get bit, the hospital doesn't have what they need. So if you come across anything exotic, that's not a good chance, as good of a chance for you. But anything like a rattlesnake, go to the hospital, they should have the anti-venom, and just tell them, I was bit by a snake. And as long as it wasn't, if it's a coral snake, you can tell pretty quickly. But that's a really good point, actually, because some people will, worry about, well, I have to identify the snake, I have to tell the hospital what it was. No, you don't. If you were bit here in North America and you say, I was outside and I got bit by a snake, it's probably a pit viper, and they'll have the correct anti-venom to give you. If you do get bit by a coral snake, say, hey, I got bit by a coral snake. It was black and red and yellow, and then they'll know that it's a different kind of anti-venom. But everybody else is covered under one, so.
No, is it true that you have a drive-by?
Yes. Yeah, I do not remember what the number is, but it's somewhere around 50% of all bites are drive-bys. So they can bite you, it's going to hurt like crazy, but they didn't inject any venom. That can happen. Still go to the hospital, for one, because you can get infections. And so, yeah, you could be allergic to their saliva, that can happen. You can get infections, you want to make sure it gets really clean, because they're eating like mice and rats and nasty stuff, right? So whatever they're eating, that can be in their saliva and get in the bite. And just because you don't know. So you can have a delayed onset of symptoms. You could have a worse reaction with some people. You could be allergic if it's a wet bite and you're allergic to the venom. Off of it being venom, you can be in a really bad way. So when you get bit, go to the hospital, period. There's definitely stories out there of people that get bit and they never go and they're fine. Sometimes it's a dry bite, sometimes it's not a dry bite and they still can get through it. But especially when you got a hospital nearby, yeah, just go. But sometimes they are dry bites and then it's not, then you're good. Well, you're still in a lot of pain, but you're good from a venom. So, yeah.
If the hospital does carry the anti-venom, is there a shelf life?
There is, that's something I don't know much about as to how long it is. If you're in a more rural area, and, you go to the hospital and their antivenom's expired, they may, call to another hospital and try to get some in. The good thing with these guys, you've got time. There are some more exotic snakes where if you get bit, you do not have a lot of time. For somebody like this, unless if you are an individual who has a really severe reaction, usually you've got some time to get to the hospital, they can get the antivenom and you should be okay.
It's really a heal country though, there's not much of a hospital.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of options. And that's where sometimes, they may keep you stable in a hospital and they may, take a helicopter to get the antivenom. It's not like a lifeline, they might lifeline the antivenom. There's some different options that they'll do there. And sometimes sometimes some keepers will have their own antivenom. Some people that have like really exotic snakes will keep their own, and sometimes hospitals know where that person is. So, yeah, usually with these guys, you've got time. The other thing about snake bites is that they say the hardest thing to do is going to be to keep calm. And that's the number one thing you should do if you get bit by a snake. As far as anything else with getting bit by a snake, if you know it's venomous or you're not sure, get to a hospital immediately. Stay as calm as you can. Don't run. Don't do anything to get your heart rate up because that will circulate the venom faster if you're doing anything aerobic. So if you've got somebody with you, have them carry you, have them stick you in something they can use to roll you with, anything that minimizes your heart rate. Take nice calm thoughts, despite how much pain you're in. Get to the hospital as quickly as you can, and then they'll take care of you. If it's not a venomous snake, so if you run across one of those water snakes and get a good bite from one of those, wash the bite. They eat nasty things, they're in nasty areas, you never know what's going to be in their mouth. Wash the bite immediately, get some antiseptic, if it gets infected, go to the doctor, that kind of thing. Pretty much anything you can as far as with rattlesnakes, use a tourniquet, suck the venom out, all of those things, they don't work. Just get to the hospital and let them take care of it. It's really your best route.
Yep. Okay. Venom is taken, once they've used their venom, is it true that it takes them a while to make more venom?
Yeah, so they don't have an unlimited supply. That part is correct. They've got these venom glands right here can only hold so much. It varies widely as to how much time is it going to take for them to put more in. They also, especially if you get bit by a venomous snake, they've gotten really good at how much venom do they need to inject. So they will only give you a little bit of venom. And I wouldn't say this when the next person says, oh, hey, they're out. I can go for it. They've still got plenty more. It is true that sometimes it's worse to get bit by a smaller snake because it doesn't have anything to do with the size so much as the small ones because it's young. And they haven't got the whole venom thing figured out yet, and so they're more likely to bite and give you a bigger dose. So that is true, that you do want to be more careful with the little ones because they can sometimes just give you a bigger dose of venom. But even then, if you've just gotten bit by a little one, everybody else should still leave it alone because it may still have plenty left. It doesn't take much. The amount of venom it takes to get you is so small. But yeah, you don't really want to mess with them again after that. So, yeah, good questions, guys. Those are a lot of kind of misconceptions or things that you hear, some things that are true about these things. So.
And I heard too that they don't want to waste their venom.
Correct. Yes.
They can't just use.
Yes.
Isn't that how they actually think?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So if a mouse comes along, you can use venom on that because that's dinner. And the venom does two things. For one, it stops the mouse from going anywhere, or the rat, or rabbit, or whatever it is. For two, it actually starts to digest the animal from the inside, which is really gross, and that's what it does if you nip it. It starts to break down. Again, there's different kinds of venom. With pit vipers, it's usually more of just that stop the heart kind of thing. With other kinds of snakes, sometimes it will really break down the skin. Kind of like the difference between a black widow bite and a brown recluse bite. If you guys have ever seen a picture of someone who's been bitten by a brown recluse spider, it just eats the skin away. And so that's what these guys are doing. They're trying to use that on something that they can eat. So if they're using that as defense from a predator, they want to use just enough to get out of there and get away from the bad situation that they're in. So those are kind of all the factors that go into it. But again, it can vary with species, with the individual snake and those kinds of things. So you never know exactly how much venom you've gotten. Go to the hospital and let the doctor figure that part out. So, yeah. Good questions, guys. Okay, any other questions? While we're on the road. Okay. So like I said, that's our only one of these 10 that I've got that's common in the San Antonio area that's venomous. Alright, another water snake. This is a plain-bellied water snake. You can see, unlike that other one, it doesn't have any pattern, and what he does have, you can kind of fairly see here, he's got this nice bright yellow belly. So he's got really one smooth color on top and a different color on the bottom. But if you look, again, it's a little hard to see, but right on his lips, he's got those dark marks again. So that's a water snake thing. It's just those dark marks by the lip. Again, typically you're only going to run across these if you're in an area with a bunch of water. Eastern Black-Nose snake. I've never seen one of these guys in person. They're kind of cute. They never get very big. They've got these longitudinal stripes again, so you've got kind of a cream in the middle, brown on the sides, and then kind of a dark cream color on the side after that. It looks different from a garter snake in a couple ways. Again, this is where I was saying you can get up close and personal and look at it. If you call this because of the way the scales are on this nose, it's different, like than you see on a garter snake. So you can also see, remember that garter snake, in addition to a checkered pattern that he had all over his body, he had those dark lines by his eyes, and this snake doesn't have that. So that's the difference in those guys. This is one that I was really surprised to have on this list. This is the Texas live snake. Yeah, they're kind of weird like a nut. It kind of looks more like a earthworm than a snake. They're really interesting. They spend most of their time actually underground. That's why they're blind. They don't really need to see because they're typically digging around underground to eat things like earthworms. Again, I was surprised that they're on there in the list of things that are seen pretty often. If you see one, you can tell it looks like an earthworm, but pretty different looking than any other snake. Not only are they not venomous, but I would not hesitate to pick one up because they've got really, really small mouths. They're not really going to be able to bite you. Yes, sir?
Actually, it's very common.
Do you have quite a few? Okay, so maybe after rain, okay.
Walking around on the streets, you'll see them, I think the rain will flush them out.
Flush them out, yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
And they get run over.
That's awesome. And they get run over. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So they're eating any sort of small invertebrate. So ants, they'll eat earthworms and stuff like that. They're like I said, they're pretty distinctive. They've got this rounded head. That's something to notice how different it is from those other things. They do have little tiny, what we call just digital eyes. They're just barely there, but they're not able to see anything. So they have little whiskers too. Oh, do they have little whiskers?
The one that mine.
So little projections, yeah, to help them sense where they're going. A lot of that's kind of like the blind salamanders. They've got the little projections so they can tell them where they're going. Rooting snakes. So this is what I mentioned. They're really similar to a garter snake. So just like the garter snake, you've got that either yellow or kind of cream-colored line going all the way down his back. Different from the checkered garter snake that you can see, doesn't have those checkers going all the way down. You see he has some different markings on his face. I can't remember it. I can't see on this one right here. But again, just another really friendly snake, mostly eating invertebrates. Good to have in your garden. These are another one of my favorites. This is a rough green snake. These guys can have some attitude. You can tell this one's not so happy right now. But they're pretty small, and sometimes they're docile, sometimes they're aggressive. They're not venomous. There's two different kinds of green snakes in North America. There's the rough green snake and the smooth green snake. And here in Texas, we mostly have the rough green snake. Again, they're mostly eating insects, not causing too much trouble. They're that really, really bright green color. They don't have any markings. You can do this mostly zoomed in on his head. So you can see the whole rest of his green body is just that green color, kind of fading yellow and white on the belly without any sort of pattern. So that's pretty distinctive if you find one of those. Alright, so I mentioned earlier their role in the ecosystem is that snakes are both predators and prey. As predators, they're really great to have around because they control two different groups of animals that most people don't want to have around. So they control rodents and they control insects. Again, I'm originally from Colorado. Colorado has a lot less bugs than y'all do here. So I am a fan of anything that eats insects. I think that's great. As I mentioned, garter snakes, especially like slugs, so that's good if you're a gardener. And they also control some of the bigger ones will eat things like rabbits and mice and rats and all of those kinds of things that you also don't want around. Alright, I'm going to talk about snake habitat. I'm going to talk about this because we learned about their habitat so that we can manipulate their habitat or manage their habitat so that we can keep them where they are and where they can be useful and not have them where we don't want them. For example, in our house, in places where if it's a venomous snake where our kids are going to get bit. So habitat has four components. Whenever I talk about habitat with different wild animals, those four components are the same broad categories, just different as to the specifics. So these are food, water, shelter, and space. And so I'm going to go through each of these for snakes. Food we talked about pretty extensively now. Vertebrates, they'll eat everything from small rodents, frogs, and toads, lizards. They will eat bird eggs. They will also take adult birds if they're able to grab them, and fish. As I was looking for a picture for this slide, I was a little distraught because frogs are my favorite animal, and if you type in on Flickr snake eating, you don't mostly get pictures of snakes eating rodents, you get pictures of snake eating frogs. So, that's pretty common of a thing. This is a rodent snake. This is out in East Texas. It's eating a frog. This is one that is a beautiful, you can't see it as well on this projection, but it's got this side stripe here is a really beautiful blue color. And these kind of spectrums that go up here are a different color of blue. And this was one where I had to sit down with a guidebook and look to see whether this started at third or fourth scale. And so that was the difference between a rodent snake and a garter snake. But they do eat frogs and toads. They do eat a lot of other small things, a lot of invertebrates, like I mentioned. They eat spiders, especially spiders. That's fun. So their food we've already talked about a lot. What about water? Do snakes drink water? They do. Yeah, they do drink water. They don't eat a lot of it. A lot of the water that they take, they can get from their prey, right? So there's some water, just like if you or I eat a salad, we're not going to get very thirsty as opposed to if we eat a bag of potato chips. So a lot of the food that snakes are eating has some water in it, but they do also drink water. So they don't just use water for drinking, they'll also use it for hunting. So here's one of our water snakes again. You can see those black bands on his lips. That's one of those water snakes. If they're water snakes, they're spending a lot of time in the water, their food is there, so they're going to use that to hunt. They'll also sometimes just use water to get around. So this is a garter snake, or no, sorry, that's a ribbon snake, just going for a swim into the water. It's from one place to another. So sometimes if you're in water, it's good to be cautious of any snake that's in the water, especially because it could be a cottonmouth. But if you can see it, and you can tell this guy, he's got that long, slender body. Cottonmouths have a big, thick body, and this guy is nice and slender. He's not venomous at all. He's just going for a swim for some reason. So they will use water for that purpose as well. Yes, sir.
I've heard that cottonmouths prefer to travel on top of the water and generally will not go in the water. Is that true?
Yep, that is actually true. You'll typically see cottonmouths more kind of swimming right at the surface. Different snakes, you kind of hold their bodies at different positions in the water, in part just depending on how often they'll swim there. But you can see this water snake, he's in hunting mode, and he's got a lot of his body down below the water. But yeah, usually if you've got something, you see something swimming down deep in the water, it's not as often going to be a cottonmouth because they'll usually stay up top. Again, that's kind of a general thing, so you still want to be careful with them. But yeah, if there's something, brushes against your leg, and you're worried about is it a cottonmouth, it could be, but a lot of times it's somebody else going for a swim. So, yeah. All right, shelter. Shelter is a big habitat component to talk about, especially when we talk about integrated pest management and managing snakes in your garden, because shelter is really important to them. Now, the main thing that they're using shelter for is really two different things. One is protection from predators. So what eats snakes? Well, actually, all kinds of things will eat snakes. A lot of our bigger birds are birds of prey, especially some of our smaller snakes. But you can see, this was the one I was getting my dissertation in Utah. That was a pretty good-sized snake. I think it was a bull snake with that great big herring caught. This was funny because he caught it. I watched him catch it on the road. He flew it out into this marsh and he kept dunking it. It was like he was trying to drown the snake. So he was dunking in the water and lift up and shake it around and dunk it back down in the water, and that went on for quite a while. But birds are definitely one thing that'll take on everything from our mammals, whether that's something small like a fox. Even raccoons will take small snakes that they can get a hold of. Domestic cats wreak havoc on things like songbirds and also will go after snakes. And then some of our aquatic things, again, just depending on the size of the snake, a bullfrog or a big fish can take a small little snake. Snapping turtles can take even bigger snakes, and then other snakes. Anybody know a snake we have around here that will eat rattlesnakes? King snake, one of those. The other one, do you have one of those? An indigo snake, yeah. They don't do it very often, but indigo snakes and they king snakes also will both eat rattlesnakes, which is pretty awesome. So some of your snakes will actually eat the snakes that you don't want around, which is a pretty good deal. The other thing that snakes need shelter for is thermoregulation. This is really important, and this is something that you can manipulate around your house. They need to be not too hot. They need to be not too cold. So they're what we call cold-blooded, right? Unlike you and I, they don't regulate their own body temperature. They have to change with their environment to change their body temperature. So if it's a cold day, they'll come out and they'll sun themselves. If it's a too hot of a day, they'll do like this rattlesnake doing, and they'll get somewhere where they can cool off a little bit. So in addition to thinking about when you're around your house, where are those areas where a snake might warm up? Where might it go to cool down? And then they have to move from one area to the other, right? So they can't spend too long being too hot or too cold. They've got to move around. So think about some of those pathways that they might be able to go. most of the time when they're moving from one area to another, the key thing there is that they're going to avoid predators during that time. So they need places where they can regulate their body temperature and avoid predators at the same time. The last thing I want to talk about habitat is space, and this is what I was mentioning with the thermoregulation, is how are those different resources connected? So snakes need and any animal, any wildlife needs those resources, food, water, and shelter on the landscape, but they need them arranged in a certain way, right? If you've got food for something, if you've got food for a snake over here, most of the mice and things are found over here, but the shelter is all the way over here, well, it's probably not going to be good snake habitat because their food and their shelter are way far apart, and they're not arranged well on the landscape. The other thing when I talk about space is they have to be able to interact with one another. So, for example, when you've got snakes, they need to be able to mate just like any other kind of animal. So if you've got space for about one snake, you only have room for about one snake, well, that one snake may not want to stay there. Or it may be there for most of the year, but during mating season it may go somewhere else because it needs to interact with other snakes. And then finally, there's abiotic factors, and this is where I mentioned kind of knowing where you are. There are certain snakes that we just won't have here because of the climate. It's too dry here for a lot of our snakes. It's too wet for other snakes that we find more out west. It's too hot for some, too cold for others. So those are all factors as well. So integrated pest management. This will be the last part that I'll cover before we take a quick break. IPM is something that started for insect populations, but we can really apply it to any kind of wildlife that we're trying to manage. The idea behind IPM, this started at the time when we were using a lot of chemicals to control things. Okay, we've got this insect pest, and so what chemicals do we have that we can use to get rid of that insect pest? And then as you guys know, when we were just using lots of chemicals like that, we started running into problems, right? We found out that that's not just the solution for everything. Whether that was insects that were developing resistance to chemicals, whether that was bad effects from those chemicals into people or in groundwater or other wildlife, a lot of things started happening. And so we said, how can we manage pests with fewer chemicals? And that's the goal of IPM, is not to use zero chemicals, sometimes that's our best option, but to use chemicals as a last resort. So kind of the steps that we go through for integrated pest management are first to know what it is. That's why I started with identification in this presentation, because you can't do anything about it if you don't know what it is. So identifying the pest first. Second, monitoring the numbers. If you have one snake in your garden, that's different than if you've got a whole bunch of snakes in your garden. I did get a call last week from a county agent whose friend had copperheads in their yard, and I think they were killing 3 to 5 a day. That's a lot of copperheads in your yard. And we're going to be talking about different management options than when one day of the summer you find one copperhead snake in your yard. That's a very different scenario. Then we're going to establish an action threshold. If you like snakes, and you've got a whole bunch of non-venomous snakes in your yard, maybe you found a hibernating den of garter snakes. Actually, that's so cool, there's a whole den of garter snakes here. So my action threshold is very high for all non-venomous snakes. So when we get to the same for you, if you like snakes, then it's okay, no problem. Maybe for some of you guys out there, you find one snake, and that's one snake too many. So you may have a different action threshold. This varies depending on what kind of animal we're talking about and what your attitude is towards that animal. Once we've determined these first three things, that's when we're going to decide what management we're going to implement. We're going to do some sort of action and then evaluate the results. Did that work or did it not? So as I mentioned, this is kind of our IPM triangle. The first thing we're always trying to do is prevent any sort of problem. From there, the next thing we want to do is cultural management. Cultural management refers to changing practices that we do to prevent the problem from happening or to reduce the problem. So, for example, if you have raccoons coming around your place, a cultural management activity would be make sure your trash is not out, make sure your garbage cans are sealed, make sure you're not leaving pet food out. Those are all behaviors of ours as humans that we're going to change to keep those pests from being a problem. Then our next kind of step here, and the next thing that we can try is mechanical. Mechanical means excluding something. So making sure that snakes can't get into your house by blocking them off or using traps to get rid of something. Biological refers to things that are natural predators of that pest, or sometimes you'll see this one thing that's been tried with some insect pests is things like a disease that we give to the insect pests to get them down. This one I try to be careful with because when you are encouraging more of a predator, well then we might get other sorts of problems that can occur. So this one can be really useful because we're talking about the natural biological system. You have fewer pests if you have more things that are eating the pests. So you have to be careful with that because you don't want to get too many of those predator species either. And then finally, chemicals down here towards the bottom. So things we can do to prevent snakes. Reducing habitat by reducing cover. So as I was talking about food, water, shelter, space, I had two different slides for shelter, and that's because that's really, really important. The yard that I was talking about that had 3 to 5 copperheads a day had all of this, what do you call it, monkey grass? So the grass is kind of low growing and flows over. Monkey grass all around their trees, all these other beautiful but low-lying shrubs. And I said, what can we do about this? And by the way, we don't want to change our garden. And I said, well, that's kind of hard because what you're doing is you've got all these plants that snakes love to be in. So one thing you can do is to make sure any bushes that you have, trim them up at the bottom. We usually think about making sure bushes are nice on the sides, at the top, so we get them all trimmed how we want. Trim up those bottom branches too, so that you can see under there, you can see if there's a snake under there, and also predators of snakes can see if there's a snake under there. That's going to make that snake doesn't want to hang out so much. Consider plants that do not skim the ground. So that monkey grass you see around trees, or the kind of vines and things that you see around trees, those are pretty common because they're nice, they're shade tolerant. But if you have a problem with snakes, or if you're one of those people that has zero tolerance for them, you're not going to want to use things like that. Consider a different ground cover that you can use on the ground. The other big thing to prevent snake problems is to make sure everything's well sealed. A lot of the small snakes especially get through pretty small holes. So just regularly check your house, check your garage, check your shed. A lot of times we make sure our houses are well sealed, but you don't really think about the shed, or you go through the winter and then realize there's a good sized hole in it, and a snake decided to come through the hole. So just check all of those buildings and make sure they're well sealed. So I have some pictures here of different places that I can kind of point out to y'all because I think it's a lot easier when you can see this as opposed to just talking about it. One thing, this is an example from up in the Dallas area of a garden that's got a whole lot of native plants. They're not all native plants, but there's a nice mixture of native plants that can be pretty good wildlife habitat. If you're interested in having a good wildlife habitat and having a lot of native species, you're going to have more volatile species, and that includes snakes. So you're kind of trade-off sometimes. If you're wanting to manage your backyard so that you have better bird habitat, you might also get a few more snakes as well. But don't let that deter you, because overall it's still beneficial to have those native habitats. As I mentioned, most of our snakes are not venomous, and so they're really just part of that natural ecosystem. Now this, I think, is still a pretty good mix. We have kind of some low-lying things, but they're pretty narrow roads. The main part in this area that I would worry about snakes maybe hanging out is this here, where you've got some really low growth. They do like to travel along buildings too, so the fact that we have those plants right up to that building, that's another place where you might want to watch out for snakes in a garden like this. This is the Lindbergh Johnson Wildfire Center in Austin. Again, you know, for the most part where people are traveling, if you're just walking along the path, you're fine. If you are somebody who's trimming up these bluebonnets or managing any of this over here, this is some nice low growth where snakes might hang out. Also, when I think about thermoregulation, nice, warm, flat surfaces like this are perfect for snakes to hang out when it's cooler. This will warm up during the day, so then they've got their shelter to hide from predators and a place to warm up. So that's the kind of situation also that you might see snakes. So part of training your eyes to look for those things. You can go home and look in your own garden, your own yard, and think, okay, where might a snake be hiding here? And then is there something I want to do about that, or do I want to leave it how it is? This is an example of somewhere we won't see any snakes, right? This is our snake. And pots are up high. Could a snake get in there? Yeah, but you have to go up the rock wall and up the planter to get into these plants that are pretty narrow. You're probably not going to see a snake in a place like this. So if you love snapdragons and you know that they're low growing and you don't want snakes in your snapdragons, maybe put them in a box. And that's one example of something you can do. This is another yard. This yard's got a big grassy area. The grass is mown pretty short. We've got some vegetable gardens where they're kind of raised up in these beds, and you can see in between all of those vegetables. So not really anywhere for a snake to hide. That's an example of something where a snake probably wouldn't be hiding. This also is not necessarily, I don't know where the picture's from, but probably maybe somewhere further east where we've got a little bit more water. So this may not be kind of your water-friendly landscape that we encourage as much here. But there are ways to do that well also. So this is a yard in Texas. This is a water-friendly landscape. It's designed to have drought-resistant plants. And you can see this is a place where, yeah, snakes can hide under these kinds of bushes. But if they're going to move from one of those places to another, they don't have a lot of other options. So most likely, if you do get a snake in here, it's not going to be a very big one. These tall plants that have a little bit more cover for snakes, those have they're a little bit away from the house. They're not right up against the house. snakes love to travel along buildings because they're protected on that one side. So if you give them a nice bush on the other side, well, now they've got good cover on both sides, and that's a really common area that they might travel. So if you pull those bushes or trim those bushes back so that they're not right up against the wall, that can discourage snakes from being in that area. This is also the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. Again, here you've kind of got a mix of places the snakes could be. Maybe some of these big bushes, they might hang out there, but they also will have to get up the wall and into these beds. So there's just kind of some different design ideas that you can consider that may encourage or discourage snakes from using a certain area. Any one of these given plots is not very big, so if a snake was to use this area, they'd have to go back out and then go somewhere else. And so overall, having pathways like this, if they're big, if you have a big garden with some big pathways, having that open space can help so that you can see if there's going to be any snakes there. Also, having a big pathway and then rather than having a bush right up next to it, having some low growth nearby, that can also help discourage snakes from using an area. And then finally, this one I believe is in the San Antonio, the Tampa area.
Oh, yeah.
Familiar with, okay. I thought a lot of your pictures take some flickers, which one side it was somewhere out here. So, again, this one kind of has a mix. A lot of these plants here, see how this has been trimmed up so that you can see underneath. This one's not too big in the first place. These aren't too big, and they kind of let some light through. This one is up close to the house, one place that I might watch for snakes on this corner here, but you can help that by trimming this up just even a little bit higher. So those are just some examples. You guys can see some different ideas of how you can still have a really beautiful garden, but maybe manage that you have fewer snakes. Cultural management. So these are things that really also, if you do cultural management in advance of having snake problems, you're preventing your snake problems, and it's great. That's one of the great things about cultural management. Removing shelters. So aside from any, beautiful bushes and flowers and things that you might have, you do not want piles of brush or weeds or whatever sitting out in your land. Now, obviously, if you just trim trees, you might have a pile of brush like this. But we've all been there where you trim it and you're like, hey, I'm going to deal with it tomorrow. And then if it rains, it's really hot or something, and you're like, well, now it's Monday. That's going to work. And so then by the time you come back next Saturday and the brush has been sitting here, that looks like perfect snake home to me. So be really careful. If you've done something like this, if you've left it over the week, or you've had a pile of brush that's been there a while, or you're just now thinking, okay, I have a stack of weeds that I should probably move, be really careful when you do go into it. Maybe use a shovel to turn it over, use sticks to kind of pull things away so that there are snakes in there they can get out before you go reaching into it. Looking before you step and reach is one big thing too. Is a cultural practice that will prevent a lot of problems with snakes. Just being careful where you put your hands. If you do have snakes on your property, so this is one thing that can work if you do have, even if you have something like a rattlesnake, this is a minnow trap. You can buy them at Academy, they're not too expensive. And the idea is that the snakes go in to the little tunnel part, but they can't get back out. Now this is especially used if we're doing something like surveying an aquatic snake. It works really well then, but you can use it to trap other snakes too. So that's one example of a trap. To keep them from even getting in the first place, you can have snake-proof fence. Snake-proof fence is not cheap. It takes a little bit of money to be able to build it because you've got to build it tall enough. You want to build it so that it's leaning out, and it's got to be small enough hole so that a snake can't get through. If you're interested in that, I do have handouts that explain how you can build a snake-proof fence. It's something good if you've got, say, like a sandbox or a play area for your kids, and you want to make sure that snakes are not getting into that area. It's not usually good if you want it to go around your whole entire yard. It is what I recommended to the family that had all the copperheads because they said they didn't want to change their landscape. And I said, well, really the only thing you can do is you want to put snake-proof fencing around your entire yard. But just making sure that you have all forms of entry seals if you're interested in that. If that's a problem with them getting into the house, make sure you seal off anywhere they can get in. So I mentioned this is a funnel trap. Other kinds of traps include glue boards like you would use for mice, so the snakes move across it and they get stuck and they can't get off. That's kind of, yeah, that's not usually the best route to go. It's effective. If you know you've got a snake, it's a problem snake. It's not going to go into a trap like this. Maybe you can use a glue board. They do get stuck, and you have to figure out what to do with them when they're stuck. Because if they get stuck, they don't die right away. And so if it's a non-venomous snake, you can maybe get it off, but you may hurt the snake. If it's a venomous one, you have to figure out if you're going to kill it somehow. So yes, ma'am.
I mean, does that work with, like, rattlesnakes?
It will if it's a big enough glue trap. So you don't want, the kinds you can buy from mice or whatever. You need like a sheet of plywood with a bunch of those laid out on it. so that it's a big surface for them to go across. Because just one, they'll keep floating around with a glue board. So yeah, you've got to have a big one. And again, the handouts that I have describes how you can do that. But that's not my recommended way to get rid of them. I would try a 12 trap first. Or the last one, which is one that I have not personally tried, but it talks about it a little bit in the handout, piling bags or netting. So I had a gentleman tell me once that the way to keep snakes out of his chicken coop is that he puts the net, you put over your fruit trees, kind of that tree netting, keep the birds off. He just kind of bunches that up, and he did this by accident. He didn't mean to, but he had left some out, and the snake got in, and because snakes can't back up, it got in and it got tangled and it was stuck. And so now he purposely puts it around his chicken coop because they'll go through it, they get all tangled up in it, and they can't get out. Most of the time, if you have netting like that, if you check it every day, you'll find the snakes in there, and if they're not venomous, then you can just take them out, and you'll get them before they're even dead, and you can move them somewhere else and keep them away from whatever it is you're trying to keep them away from. Piles of bags, like burlap sacks, will get on kind of a nice, a little bit more moist and dark, good hiding spot, and again, snakes might kind of come into those piles and then you can move them out. You do have to be careful with that because it is permanent. And so if you have a problem, like if you know you have a rattlesnake nearby, you just want to be careful with putting something like netting out because then you've got a rattlesnake or whatever stuck in your bags or stuck in your netting. So you want to be really, really careful with that. That's one of the nice things about a tunnel trap is that you can have, like it shows here, you've got the rope attached to it so that you can pull it and move it somewhere else. You do still have the issue of a live snake in there. So you have to decide what you want to do with that. If it's non-venomous, probably just let it go. If it's venomous, you might want to get somebody else and let it go. But or let them deal with it. So those are kind of some different mechanical traps that may work. It's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit trickier to do something like with snakes than it is with mice or rats. And so that's why I think that's why mechanicals number 2, right? So we'll try some of the cultural things before we do mechanical traps. So stored biological, our main snake predators, so I mentioned earlier that big list, the main ones that you would get around your house or garden are birds of prey. So if you have birds of prey around, that's a good thing. There's not too much you can do to encourage them, other than keeping your trees trimmed up so that they have a place they can see and sit, see if there's any snakes on the ground. But that's not the most effective. That's not going to be your number one way to try to control snakes. And then finally, with chemical, there are no registered toxicants to use against snakes, and there are no known effective repellents. So I've had the question for, well, can I plant something that snakes don't like, so they'll stay away from it? And there's not. You can buy things in a store that you can spray this, and it'll keep snakes away, but none of those have been shown to work. Actually, some of those, with other things, not with snakes, but some of those have been tested with things like deer, and sometimes it makes it more palatable, whatever you're trying to keep away. So don't waste your money on any kind of repellents to try to keep away snakes, because so far we've not shown any of them to actually work. So again, chemicals, kind of our last result. With snakes, it's not even an option because we don't have anything that works. So, snakes are friends. These are the 2 water snakes that I'm talking about. I think shortly after this picture, it was this gentleman that ended up bitten by either this water snake or the one he was handling. I don't remember. Again, they're not venomous, but they do deliver a pretty nasty bite. However, you certainly don't have to decide to pick them up. You can just let them be, and they'll kind of do their thing. So with that, we are at 11:15 right now, so we're going to take like a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about lizards and purples. Okay, let's go ahead and get started on part 2. I do, by the way, I have these snake handouts up here, and y'all can grab them at the end. You're welcome to take as many as you want. They talk about, it's a publication in part by Wildlife Services because they fall under AgriLife Extension, and it talks about a lot of those things that I just went through, cultural control and mechanical and those kinds of things. So, alright, so for our next about 35 minutes here, we're going to talk about other reptiles. So, just like we did with snakes, who here loves lizards? Okay, we got a couple more than we did with snakes. That's good. Who here is kind of a so-so about lizards? Take them to the doesn't really matter. Anybody really dislike lizards? Okay, so few. So lizards overall, people tend to like those more than snakes. How about turtles? Who loves turtles? Okay, alright, we got some who love turtles. Nice. So about turtles? Anybody not like turtles? There's very few people that dislike turtles. They're pretty, they're pretty low-key, they're pretty fun little critters, so. Alright, so starting off with lizards, and talking about identification. Lizards, we get some amazing variety of sizes and shapes and colors, and they're really, really cool. So, one thing with lizards is size, but just like with snakes, you get that whole range of sizes, especially when you get juveniles versus adults. But there's kind of four different things we can look at with lizards as the size. So body girth, just like we talked about with snakes, some of them are going to be really wide, or some of them are going to be pretty skinny. The tail to body ratio, so how long is their tail compared to the rest of them? Because some lizards have pretty short tails and some of them have quite long tails. Their head size in comparison to the rest of their body, and then there's some length, because there is some variation there. So if we look at these two different lizards that we have up here on this screen, you can see on our common lizard, which is our one here to the right, they've got really stocky bodies. And that's common of all of our different color lizards. They also have fairly long tails. So if you can see, here's where the tail starts, and the front half of the body compared to, and in the picture you can see the tail curves all the way around. His tail is longer than the rest of his body, and that's something that we see with color lizards pretty often. Head, having a thicker head, both of these guys have fairly similar head shape. They're both pretty broad, stocky heads, and then total length. Color lizards are one of our bigger lizards that we have in the state. I have this picture here, this one down here I mentioned before I talked about shape as far as length. This is a 6-line race rider. If you look at his tail is about twice the length of the rest of his body. So this is a pretty small lizard overall. You can see on this person's hand, but he's got a really, really, really long tail. So shape is probably one of our best ways to identify between different lizards, as far as kind of what their general body shape looks like. And we can break this down to their head, their body, and their tail. So down here we have a skink. Skinks have very flat everything. You can see his head's pretty flat, his body is pretty flat, and it's round, it's very wide, but it's pretty flat, and then his tail is kind of flat and kind of just round and fat and flat. Both fat and flat at the same time. That's kind of what we see with skinks. This one's going to be horn toad. Horn toad or horn lizard. I grew up always calling them horn toads. I call them horn lizards because they are not toads. But their heads are the most angular of any of our lizards. Right? They've got all these little projections, all these firm scales coming out from the sides of them, as well as their body. Their bodies are really wide. They're the widest of any of our lizards that we're going to see here. And they've got these little spiky scales coming off all along the side of them. And then their tails are pretty thick too. So they're a very distinctive shape. Now the thing you can do with shapes is you can't always tell, okay, is this a ground skink or is this a 4-line skink or some other kind of skink? You can't necessarily tell that right away with looking, but what you can tell with lizards is by that shape, putting them in broad categories. So if you have a lizard that's got a fat body and a spiky head and tail is relatively short, that's going to be a horned lizard. We've got 3 different species of horned lizards here in Texas. This is going to be one of those, though. I don't know how many different species of skinks, but it's got kind of a flattened head, a fat and flat body and tail, and it's going to be a skink. And also kind of where they are, because skinks you tend to find kind of on the beneath, flittering down on the ground. This 6-line race rider fall in a category of lizards that have a whole bunch of different species. And again, they're called race runners, and again, they just have that really, really long, slender body, long, slender tail, much longer than their body is. And so those are kind of some things to look for just for your general groups of lizards. Now behavior is something from with lizards that we didn't talk about with snakes. So I mentioned that on a few of the snakes, this one's more aggressive or this one's more docile, and that can be one way that can kind of be difficult species, but not as much. With lizards, one of our really fun things that they do is you can sometimes watch them do their mating displays. And this is a really neat thing to observe. So does anybody know what kind of lizards we have up here? Anoles, yeah. So this one on the right is a green anole, and the one on the left is a brown anole. And these ones have this flap under their neck, it's called a dewlap, and they use it when they're doing mating displays. So most likely, you can't see the picture, but most likely there is another green anole nearby. He might be down on the other side of the fence. They're both males, and this green anole is saying, this is my fence post, you're going to stay away from the fence post, it is mine. And in addition to showing this really colorful dewlap, they'll sometimes do push-ups. So you'll see them, they'll bob their head really fast, or they'll do little push-ups, so they're just showing off to each other. That's something that you see in a knoll a whole lot, and that's a fun behavior to watch. You can get into it too. I've seen some, when I went to Honduras a few years ago, I got to see some of the knolls that were down there, just like even just kind of like those vibrant kind of colors, like blues and oranges and all kinds of beautiful colors. So that's one neat behavior thing. Now, lizards do that as a whole. A lot of those will do that. Some of the fence lizards and things, they'll do that head bob or the push-ups, but they don't have, the dewlap is really something you see in the knoll, so you won't see that in some of the other fence lizards, and that's a good way to tell a knoll apart from everything else. Sometimes I hear these called geckos, they're not geckos, and they're a separate thing.
I have one that lives in my front yard that almost every afternoon when I come home is sitting in a flower pot looking at his reflection in the mirror and talking in the glass.
Yeah, they are pretty bold when they think like whether it's a reflection or whether it's another lizard. They declare this is my territory. So yeah, they're definitely fun ones to watch. And then color patterns. So as the snakes, this can vary a lot, and we can see a lot of different, kind of colors, but some of the patterns that we see will be the same. So this is a type of spiny lizard. You see these guys a lot. They're one of our really common ones. And so even if you have one that's a lighter color than this, it's still going to have these black bands going across, and then you can see where the black hits on the side, then there's a white median there. So it's kind of makes a cool little alternating pattern. And that's something common on those. You can also see just kind of how spiny he is overall. He's got a broader head than some of our other lizards. If you compare him to a sensor, they're really, really similar. But again, you can see this pattern here doesn't go all the way across. You can see he's got the black parts, and then there's a black scale in the middle connecting them. He's got these dark marks, and then there's a light brown scale in the middle, so they're not connected. So sometimes with these guys, you've got to look pretty close and pay attention to some of those small details.
What do you call one of a fence lizard?
I use a fence lizard. I don't remember what kind, so it might be I don't remember right now. I think I have it in my file. I can check later. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of different fence lizards. So I did a similar thing here that I did with the snakes. I just went through and found the top 5 of the lizards that are commonly reported in iNaturalist for Bexar County. Number 1 was green and old, so you've got lots of them around. You guys have probably seen them. They're pretty mild little lizards. If you touch them and pull them, they don't typically bite. They're kind of hanging out and doing their thing. They're pretty fast. Most lizards are fast enough that even if you want to catch them, you're not going to be able to catch them. So they're not really a concern as far as getting bitten or anything. Most of them won't bite. Most of them will just run away. Types of spiny lizards, I mentioned these guys are one of our most common across the state. They're pretty widely distributed. You'll find them a lot sunning themselves on rock places. So for these guys, one of their common behaviors is just sunning behavior, where they'll go up and find nice rocks and hang out. Although they will do some posturing displays as well. Rose-bellied lizards are really similar. So this is one, and if you look at the 2 different, I've got the scientific names up here, there's Venus is the same. So Coloporus is our Texas spiny lizard and our rose-bellied lizard. And you can see those are 2 really, really similar looking lizards. Now on this one, you can see it's got more of that rose-colored belly, as the name implies. It's a little more yellow on this one, a little bit pink. But the other thing that you can look at is how these 2 apart. Look at this nice light line that comes from it straight at its eye and going back down. And if you look at our tiny lizard, it's got this line that looks here, but it doesn't connect all the way up to its eye. So it's kind of got some other little scales there, whereas this one is a smooth line all the way up. And the rose-bellied lizard also doesn't have these dark saddles that go across its back. Because you can't see its back here, but it's kind of got more of the light patterning across its back. So that's going to be consistent across those. You can also see it's got kind of a white line right below its eye, and we don't see that when I check with spiny lizard. His lips are kind of all the same color across, and here we see kind of that cream color, then another brown stripe, and then where the mouth goes. So that's the way to tell those 2 apart. Okay, and house gecko, what do you guys know about these? They're in our house, they're everywhere. What else? Are they native here? No. So Mediterranean house gecko. These came from the Mediterranean. I don't know how long ago they were brought over, but they are pretty much everywhere. They hang out in boxes, and they're not native. So geckos fall in a couple different categories. One fun thing about geckos is when they climb up inside your house, right? Or they can hang on the glass or whatever. Our geckos that are native to Texas, we do have native geckos here. They're called Texas banded geckos. They can't do this. They can climb things, but they don't have the same kind of toe pads where they can hang on the glass like these can. They're usually found more down on the ground. So that's a really big difference with them compared to the house geckos. Now, the house geckos, one interesting question with them is whether or not they're actually causing any negative impact. So I love having them around the house because again, they eat bugs. Things that eat bugs are my friends. I think they're great. They're kind of fun to watch all over the place, and they don't really cause any problems. However, we don't know exactly what they're doing in the ecosystem. To my knowledge, there's not been a study as far as what house geckos do, because they're not native to here. What are they doing with the ecosystem? We don't really know. They're definitely a species that's non-native, and they're invasive, meaning they've taken over and they've spread throughout a large area. But what are the impacts that they're having? And that's something we just don't have the answer to. So, in the meantime, I don't know more on it. And then finally, another common thing around here is brown skink. So as we talked about the skink earlier, they're both fat and flat at the same time. They've got kind of wide, fat body, but very flat this way too. Big brown tail, but overall he's nice and flat so that he can get into small spaces on the ground. Brown skink's a good name, so they spend most of their time kind of hiding in leaf litter, places down on the ground in the dirt, not underground, but just kind of in the litter on the ground. Brown skinks, what's distinguishing on them is this dark line that runs, you can see from the tip of the nose all the way down to where the tail starts. They've got that dark line. So these guys, you're not going to find them as often, because a lot of times their behavior is just to stay hidden. So you won't find them out sunning or posturing like some of the fence lizards that are more bold.
I've seen these more around creek beds.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. So skinks overall like to have it more moist. So you'll see them down low-lying areas. You find more of them, say, out in East Texas than you will around here. So, yeah, that's a good point. All right, so mainly lizards are predators, and also they are prey. So when we talked about snakes, we were saying they're mainly predators, and then some things eat them too. Lizards, because they're small, they do things like eat lizards. Snakes will eat them, birds will eat them. Small mammals will eat them if they can get a hold of them. If raccoons can catch a lizard, that's going to be a pretty happy raccoon. But as predators, they're great insect control. So this is not a local lizard. The only way to find even a picture of something will come from England. So this is an English lizard. But maybe a spider. So that's great. I personally am not a huge fan of spiders, so I think that's great if they're going to eat spiders. Habitat for lizards. So we already talked about broadly food, water, shelter, space. That's the things we call habitat. But from a lizard's point of view, the things that are really important there are where they can find food, so where they're going to be able to hunt some prey, where is there good thermoregulation, and where is there escape cover. So that's similar to what we talked about with snakes, right? Snakes need to be able to thermoregulate, and they need to be able to not stay eaten. Well, lizards, same thing, just a little bit different as to where they're going to do that. Because, unlike snakes, lizards can climb on vertical surfaces, right? So we might see them up a little bit more on things like fences and rocks, and places that we wouldn't find snakes. They can get up on walls, hanging on the side of a wall. And escape cover, they don't need as much cover to hide, right? Generally, they're smaller than snakes. They don't need as big of a place to be able to hide. If you don't like lizards and you're interested in keeping them out of your garden, I don't really have a lot of suggestions for you, because they really are able, because they're small bodies, they can get into a lot of different places. As far as, if they don't like skinks, you can kind of keep the leaf litter cleaned up, and that'll keep the skinks out, or just if you're in a drier area. For the most part, lizards will move through pretty readily, and that's okay, because they're eating the bugs, so that's a good thing. Alright, turtles. I put turtles as a whole broad category, even though we're talking about turtles and tortoises. Anybody know the difference between a turtle and a tortoise? Really just a name thing. It's just what we're calling them. I learned this as I was looking some things up, is that in the UK, they will actually call a tortoise, in Australia, they call it a tortoise if it's a turtle that goes in the water that's not a sea turtle. So they would call a box turtle a tortoise. So that's very confusing. So a lot of times the turtle versus tortoise thing, they're all turtles. It's kind of like when we say, well, what is a square? The square rectangle? Yes, it's a type of rectangle. A tortoise is a type of turtle. So that's why I've titled this broadly as turtles. So generally in the U.S., when we talk about turtles, we're talking about things that are in more moist environments. So again, something that you'll find more along the creek if you have a nice shady area, or kind of an area where your yard doesn't drain as well, keeps the water a little bit more. That's the kind of area that a turtle might like to hang out in. Whereas tortoises are really highly adapted to arid ecosystems, and we'll find them in dry places like deserts. So again, this is a box turtle. Box turtles are called that because they can fold up their shell completely. So something that's really interesting when we talk about turtles and identifying turtles is looking at their shells, but not just looking at the top part of their shell, but looking at the bottom part of their shell as well. So box turtles, if he pulls his head and his legs into the shell, This bottom part has a hinge so that it can hold up completely, and you can't see him in there at all. He's completely enclosed in this little box. The tortoise, he can't do that. So if he holds his head and his legs back, well, he might not be able to see his head and his legs, but this part of the shell is fixed. It's not going anywhere. So that's the difference specifically of why we call box turtles. So as we talked about with lizards and snakes, size and shape are important, but with turtles we see that a little bit differently. So one thing that you want to look at the shape of is their shell. So here's a pretty big difference between this box turtle here and this soft shell turtle here. Big difference in what their shells look like, right? Here we've got a very compact shell, very rounded on top, whereas in the soft shells, we're named that because their shells are a lot softer, and it's also flat, right? It kind of looks like a pancake. And sometimes they're called that, sometimes they're called pancake turtles. So that's one thing to look for. Another thing is the shape of the head. You can see in the box turtle a much more rounded head as opposed to this soft shell turtle that has this funny little snout. Have you guys seen soft shell turtles before? Okay, some people know. They're kind of funny looking, right? With that really narrow little snout. Again, this just kind of has to do with the kind of different prey that they're catching. Different sort of prey, different sort of head and mouth to be able to catch that prey. You can also tell here, this kind of goes along with the head. This box turtle can reach its head out pretty far. Soft shell turtles, this is kind of on the safety announcement, they have really, really long necks and they do bite. So we don't have any such thing as a venomous turtle, but these guys get the ones that are pretty nasty bite. If you catch one, you have to hold them differently than you typically hold a turtle to avoid getting bit. I've not experienced this personally. Again, this was, I think, the same group trip. I've heard somebody else doing it, but you have to hold them up here, back behind them, and kind of like push them down so that they can hold on the side so they can reach around the side. So you gotta be careful with those guys. And then finally, the tail can be different shapes as well. So this box turtle, you can't see his tail, but he's got it tucked under. Their tails are really round at the base and then just narrow, kind of like you think of a tail, looking like kind of a lizard tail. This soft shell turtle, you can see this right here. That's a tail right there. A big, flat, stubby, paddle-like tail. Everything about this turtle here says it spends a lot of time in the water. Even if you look at the shape of its teeth, it's got these long, kind of paddle-like teeth, and some of these short little, stumpy teeth that the box turtle has that are used for moving around on the ground. He's got paddles, so they can be nice and hydrodynamic and swim around in the water pretty well. So that's something different that we see. Shape is a really good thing with turtles. Again, kind of to group them into different groups to see if they have a box turtle or a soft shell turtle. There's different kinds of soft shell turtles, and then we can look at some other views. Alright, color and pattern. So I mentioned looking at both the top and bottom of the shell. So on the left, we have a type of burger feeder, and on the right, we have some red sliders. So a couple different colors and patterns again, that pattern being important because we get some color variation, is to look on their head and their legs. So we can see both of them have these nice yellow stripes running down their head. But we see on the red slider, they're named that because they've got some red ears, right, where their ears would be if they had ears. In the red color, as opposed to on this river feeder, he doesn't have that. Also, if you look at the location of those yellow stripes, not only do we have this big, thick red ear on the red ear sliders, you can see this one here, that main yellow stripe is starting at his eye and then going down underneath him. As opposed to on his river feeder, the thickest yellow stripe comes up above his eye. He also has some down here, under and on the side, so you've got that big, thick one that goes up above, and we don't see any on top. You can see the top of this guy's head pretty well. He doesn't have any of those markings up on the top of his head. And see their legs are pretty similar. The markings are a little stronger here on the red sliders, but this river feeder does also have the yellow markings on its legs too. So on those, that's pretty similar.
Is your river feeder the same as the yellow belly slider? That's what I mean.
That may be something that they're also following. I'm still learning all my different names, but I think they're the same. I think they're the same genus, and so they probably also be called sliders. I'll have to check that because I'm still thinking maybe feeders are different. Yeah, we're gonna check that afterwards. But yeah, so you can tell there's some really cool markings on the bottom of the shell. A lot of turtles are kind of plain on the top parts of their shell. Why might that be? Camouflage, right? Yeah, so they're kind of just this plain brown pattern. If I'm looking for a turtle and I'm looking from up above, it makes sense to have kind of this plain brown pattern that you can't see very well. But underneath is oftentimes a different story. So on this river feeder, you can see it's got the orange with these kind of round marks here. That's actually really similar to what we see on the red sliders. kind of these dark black circle marks with yellow in between. So that's something really similar. But definitely you can flip them over and sometimes see different patterning on the underside of a turtle that can give you a better clue than just kind of the general brown shell that was on top. Okay, so again, 5 most common turtles that you get in the Bexar County area. This is a red-eared slider, or I sometimes call it a pond slider. You can see his red ears for one. This one has a nice shell that's not worn too much. That's another reason you don't always want to use the patterns on the shell, especially on the top of the shell, as your identification, is because on older turtles, this will get really, really worn down. And so sometimes those patterns won't get right. If it's not breeding season, they might not get right, but especially on old ones, it can get really rough and worn. So looking for these patterns, again, there's the red by his ears. Does even have a few really light yellow lines on top, but for the most part, the yellow starts at his eye and then goes down from there. And then we've got some nice yellow lines on his feet as well. So spiny softshell, there's I think 2 different kinds of softshell. The spiny softshell is more common around here. You can see his big paddle teeth. His feet are huge. You can see through a lot of time in the water. Front feet very similar, and then his head has got that pointy nose. Sometimes when you see these guys in the water, you'll just see their little nose sticking up. So that's again an adaptation they have to being in the water, so they're able to breathe by just sticking their little nose up in the fall. And here's the Texas river cooter. So yeah, most of the times no, so that's actually a different genus. I don't know whether maybe a slider or if it's something different or Indian instead. So this is the Texas river cooter. He's got a little bit more rounded shell. He's a little bit more compact overall. And again, we talked about the yellow markings on him versus the red-eared slider. Not only does he lack the red ears, but there's that bright yellow stripe going up on the top of his head. So we don't see that on the red-eared slider. And then he's got a bright kind of yellow V that goes from his eye and down, and that's different looking also compared to the red-eared slider. Snapping turtle. This is the 4th most common sea one. In the San Antonio area. This picture was not from San Antonio. I'm not sure where this one's from. This is a big snapping turtle. I think it's all the kind of angle that they took it at, because they kind of took it from down below him. So again, having things with some reference in your pictures is really important, but these things can get giant. Don't let them do that all. There's really no good way to pick up a snapping turtle other than you can't pick them up by the tail. Again, just leave them alone. These guys will eat all kinds of different things. They will eat pretty much any small thing that they can get their mouths on. And they're surprisingly fast. So these are the one turtle that, like I said, there are no venomous turtles, but these guys have very strong bite force. They can take a finger off if you're messing with them. So just leave them alone. But one of the really good things about snapping turtles, and I'll talk about this more later, is that they will eat, in addition to things like fish and frogs and small little things in the water, they're also scavengers. So they'll eat things that are dead and contained in the river. So they serve a really important role in many different stuff. And the 5th most common is the Texas tortoise. Anybody know anything about the Texas tortoise that makes it special and is worth knowing? In this area, they're state listed as a threatened species. Something really important about Texas tortoise, because it means don't mess with them. You can't catch them, don't harass them. Their populations are not doing well in the state of Texas. So they're not federally listed, but their populations here in Texas are low enough and declining enough that the state says we're going to let them threaten. So you cannot keep these guys in captivity without a special permit. The rest of the turtles you can mess with them, be nice with them, but you can check them out and stuff. These guys live below most of their things because their populations are doing super well. So being a tortoise, you'll usually find them in more dry areas. You're not going to find them inside a down by the river like you will all the different sliders. They've got these kind of nice little yellow markings on their scutes, on their shells, and they're not scaled on the scutes. And they're kind of yellow in the middle and they're going off from there. You can also tell that he's meant for more of an arid land, as opposed to all of the sliders and things. He's got some really short, stocky legs. His head's more scaly, so he's more just kind of looks like he belongs in a dry environment. You'll often find these guys in places like burrows because they will burrow down, and then just in more dry habitats. So things like prickly pears, so they can survive in a drier environment. Alright, so I mentioned all of the ecosystem. For the most part, turtles are omnivorous. So when we talk about snakes are really only eating things that are alive. They're going to catch and eat something that's alive. Same thing for lizards. Lizards don't usually snack on things like fruit. They will sometimes eat fruit, but for the most part, they're going to go after things like insects. Turtles are omnivorous, so they will eat things like insects. They will also eat things like plant material, whether this is a fly plant or some sort of terrestrial plant as well. And then there's scavengers. So this is a picture of a snapping turtle down in a river. I don't know where, a really kind of reddish, murky-looking river. But they'll find whatever sorts of things are dead lying in the river, fish that have died, other sorts of animals that have died, and they'll scavenge on that. So that's really, really good for nutrient cycling, because instead of just having these dead, decomposing things in the river, we have something that's cleaning that up. So that's an important role that snapping turtles serve. As for other turtles, other than snapping turtles, they can be predators of things, they can be prey for certain things, there are things that are able to eat turtles, so they just kind of fit in that middle role in the ecosystem. Alright, so different from lizards and snakes, two really important habitat features for turtles are water and then thermoregulation, which is the same as we talked about for lizards and snakes. But that water is really key. You're typically not going to find turtles, definitely not anything like sliders or river feeders, if you're not around water. So this weather is climate here, it's demonstrating both at the same time, you can hear the water, and this is why you'll often see them out back, on logs, is because the water might feel nice and cool to us, but for them, if they spend too long in it, their body temperature is going to drop a lot, and they have to come out on the logs to bath. For turtles, as with lizards and snakes, and kind of for all reptiles, part of the reason they spend time in the sun is not just to warm up, but because while they're warm, that allows their body to do processes like to digest their food. So if they stay too cold, they're not able to properly digest their food. And so that's one reason that they'll come out and bath, because especially if they've just eaten something, they'll come out and they'll get warmed up so that they can digest what they've eaten. Alright. So, finishing off. So snakes. We talked about identification. We talked about the size and colors and the patterns, and those patterns are one really key thing, along with the size that we see, like the size of the head, the size of the body. So we're not really talking about length, but the girth of the snake or the size of its head are some important things to look at. Snakes are mainly, their role in the ecosystem is as predators, and in the garden that can be great because they're going to reduce populations of rodents, reduce populations of insects. Thermoregulation and hiding places are important, so if you don't want snakes in your garden, reduce those hiding places. That's one thing that will help. Overall, though, preventing problems with snakes is the best way to go. Cultural management works really, really well with snakes. If you're just aware of where they might be, seal up your buildings, and remove any sort of debris that's a good hiding spot, that will help keep snake numbers down. Biological management doesn't really have a big impact. If you have hawks, they might eat your snakes. That's useful, but that's not really our main way to do it, and there are not any chemical management options for controlling snakes. Alright, lizards, one of the key things for them can be behavior. There's a few behaviors that certain species of lizards display that can really help you tell one apart from other ones. And then kind of the shape and the pattern, similar to snakes, what shape is the head and the body of the lizard, how long is the tail, that can be a really good key that you'll see sometimes in guidebooks. They're both predators and prey, so they'll eat a lot of things like insects, and then they're certainly on the menu for other things as well. Big thing with lizards, as with snakes, is having hiding places for them. So if you have reptiles or things like that, but because they're smaller bodies than a snake, they can hide pretty easily. So it doesn't take much to hide a lizard. With turtles, big thing for identifying them is their shape. Are they rounded? Are they flat? Are they kind of stretched out? And then where are we finding them? So if you find them down by the water, if you find them in a more arid habitat, you may have a tortoise, which is just a certain type of turtle. They're really good at nutrient cycling, both because they're eating plants and animals, and then we have things like snapping turtles that are scavengers, and so that's good as well. For habitat, water is really key. So other than tortoises, you're usually going to find turtles in habitat where you have enough water. But that thermoregulation is important for all three of those things. So for more information, maybe you want to hear more about snakes, maybe you've decided that lizards are your new favorite thing, anything like that. Guidebooks are a really great place to start. So even in a time when we have so much technology, I really, especially for reptiles, I think guidebooks are still the way to go. If you're into birds, and that's what I'm going to talk about in my next section, there's some amazing electronic field guides, where if you don't want to take a field guide for birds, you can really get by with just the electronic thing. Snakes haven't caught up to this yet. Reptiles in general, they haven't gotten to this point. So I still recommend getting a paper guidebook. Now with guidebooks, especially if you're new to getting guidebooks, there's a couple different things that I like to talk about. One is the range that it's covering. So you can get Texas-specific guidebooks. So both of these here I've got Field Guide to Texas Snakes. This is a pretty old one, and y'all are welcome to come look at these too. This is a newer field guide for Texas snakes. So both of these only contain snakes in Texas. If you're just planning to identify snakes in your backyard, these are a great option because you don't have to flip through and say, oh, this is from, even in a state where I am, we're just talking about Texas snakes. Now this is Reptiles and Amphibians of Eastern Central North America. So this is all of Eastern North America and also includes the amphibians. So if you're more interested in some of the other things, maybe you're interested in amphibians, maybe you have family somewhere else back east and you plan to travel there a lot, or you plan to take a trip, something like this is really good because it includes a broader range, so there's a lot more species in here. So look at the range when you're considering which guidebook you want to buy. Again, species, these are just snakes. You can get some that are all reptiles, and you don't usually find some that are just lizards, although those are probably out there, just lizards, just turtles. A lot of times, reptiles and amphibians will all be in the same one, though. That's pretty common. And then the layout. This is something that, if you've never bought a guidebook before, I encourage you to find, I'm assuming there's Barnes & Noble around your phone. You guys still have, brick and mortar bookstores somewhere? If you've never had your hands on a guidebook, and so you don't know what kind you want, get your hands on a guidebook. Don't just go to Amazon and say, oh, this one's top rated, I'm going to get this one, because they're often laid out very differently. So these ones that I have here, this old one of Texas snakes, has all the pictures up front, and then all the descriptions in the back. So that's kind of nice, because maybe you want to flip through and say, okay, does it look like this, does it look like this, and then we can go read about it and see the map. Peterson field guides are all laid out similar. So if you are a birder and you have Peterson field guides for your birds that you love, you might also like the Peterson field guide for first, because it's got, first you've got your pictures, and then you've got your text and your maps. The old Peterson field guides have pictures, and then maps, and then text. And that was kind of a pain in the butt to flip back and forth. But again, it's kind of what you're used to and kind of what you like. Some of them will have the pictures and the text and the maps all on one page. So you just kind of have to get used to it depending on what you like. I like Sibley's field guides for birds. They have the pictures, the text, and the map all in one place. And I love Peterson field guides for reptiles and amphibians because that's what I grew up using. So I'm used to having the pictures in one place and the text and the maps in another. So really just getting your hands on it and deciding what you want. Then finally, size. So depending on where you're wanting to use your field guide, this one's pretty hefty. So if I'm going out in the field, I'm probably not going to take this one with me because it's pretty big. However, this nice old one that I have of snakes, the one that's old, so I don't care as much if something happens to it while I'm in the field, but it's nice and thin and lightweight. So if you're going to be doing some hiking, I would consider a lighter, smaller one as opposed to if you're mostly identifying things in your backyard and maybe a big, heavy one doesn't matter so much. Last two things are two really good websites. Texas Parks and Wildlife Fact Sheets. They're currently working on updating some of these, so there's the address to that. They have quite a few reptiles and amphibians up there already, and like I said, they're working on getting some more up there. And then My Naturalist, if you haven't already used it, I highly recommend it. It's great for taking a picture. Somebody will help you identify it, usually pretty quick, and it really helps out scientists too because you're recording that observation. So they can be studied later, which is a really neat thing. So with that, I will take any questions. This is my email and my phone number. Like I said, I'm happy to take pictures of snakes. If you want to send those to me, I will identify them for you. Please keep them alive. And if you have something for reference, then I'll be really happy about that. So any questions you guys have now, and also you're welcome to come up and grab these field guides and let me know. So thank you guys.